If your running back depth is shot right now, you may be trying to start guys like Jeff up in row 58C that just spilt beer on the front of his shirt and's got a big foam finger on his hand. And even though some of our rosters feel like we don't have anybody that we can play right now, today's running back rankings are going to have almost 50 guys that you could potentially put in your lineup. So let's run through them all. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully this week is going well for you. We don't have any teams on a bye, so we have got a plethora of running backs that we could throw in our lineups if we're dealing with injuries or inconsistent play or whatever it may be. And I'm going to be talking about a ton of them in this video, so make sure that you listen to the whole thing and really understand who are going to be your best bets to help you win your fantasy matchup. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, turn those bell notifications on so anytime we go live or drop new content, you'll know about it right away. But without further ado, let's kick it off, and we all know who RB1 is gonna be. All right, so I may go through this video a little bit quicker than normal today just because there are so many guys I'm going to talk about, because I know if I don't talk about all these guys, I'm going to get comments asking about them. So I might as well just clarify for you right now. But Christian McCaffrey, ranked number 1, going up against the Bengals. They're ranked 29th against the run. You know, McCaffrey banged up all last week, still came in and played a full workload last week against Minnesota, scored a couple touchdowns. We can always bank on those scores from Christian McCaffrey, it feels like. Hopefully his total yards, though, approach what his season total have been, right around 118 yards per game. Hopefully we get back on track and Christian McCaffrey puts together a huge day. Alvin Kamara at number 2, going up against Indianapolis, currently ranked 21st against the run, allow the 7th most fantasy points to the running back position, and Alvin Kamara could bank 10 targets again this week. The biggest thing about Kamara is that he's been propped up by some crazy target and receiving numbers, but the biggest thing for him this week is the fact that his rushing yards could hit a season high, which would give him one of the highest ceilings of the week. Just a couple of weeks ago, Isaiah Pacheco seemed like he was in a smash spot going up against Denver, only totaled 62 yards on the ground and caught all 6 of his targets for 36 yards. So not as big of a game as we would have liked for Pacheco, but he's getting some of the biggest volume right now. I'm going to go ahead and list him up here at number 3 because the matchup against the Denver Broncos definitely brings a whole lot of upside, and he brings one of the safest floors of any running back right now. Over the last couple of weeks, teams have a disturbing trend of not running the football against the New York Giants, even though the New York Giants have a terrible time stopping the run. Hopefully the New York Jets get away from the other mistakes that teams have made and they run the football with Breece Hall this week. He has taken over as the lead back. To start the year, was seeing a lot of splits with Dalvin Cook, was really big play dependent, but over the last couple of weeks, now that he's trusting himself, looks like he's 100% and he's been given the full reins of this backfield, he's becoming one of the highest upside plays at the running back position right now. Travis Etienne's been giving us all the touchdowns in the world over the last 3 weeks, and I absolutely love that, don't get me wrong, but his overall yard numbers haven't been nearly as high as I would have liked. This week, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, we could really get back on track because they are ranked 28th against the run right now. So even if Travis Etienne cannot give us the high upside with those touchdown numbers, hopefully the yards this week will look a lot better as well. Last week, I ended up having Austin Ekeler at number 6 overall as well, and I got smashed in the comments. How could you have Austin Ekeler so low? His upside is so much better. And he ended up finishing way lower than number 6. Now, do I think that's going to happen continuously? No, he's on the way back from injury. He hasn't really been getting the full workload that I feel like Austin Ekeler deserves, but this week going up against Chicago, I definitely feel like we could be getting him worked into the passing game a little bit more. The Chicago Bears defense allows the most receiving yards to the running back position. Austin Ekeler does have a little bit more upside than maybe this number 6 ranking will allow, but I think it also depends on what the score is, if the Bears can stay competitive, and whether or not the Chargers feel like they want to use Joshua Kelly just a little bit more again this week to make sure Austin Ekeler stays healthy. And number 7 this week, we're going to go with Saquon Barkley going up against the New York Jets. The New York Jets defense currently ranked 26th against the run, and they don't allow a whole lot of fantasy points to the running back position, but Barkley is still averaging over 22 touches per game this season, and he's been a top 24 running back in 75% of his games as well. Yes, maybe a couple of weeks ago he didn't look super healthy, but last week he looked a lot better, and hopefully now with another week he's back to 100%. And if the Giants are going to win this game against the New York Jets, let's run the football and let's dominate on the ground. In number 8, I'm going to stay right here with Raheem Mostert. Now, he is dealing with an ankle injury right now, and he did not practice as of this recording. But we're at that point of the season where a lot of players are going to be questionable, and a lot of players are not going to practice. And really, it's just about making sure that teams give them a good injury management system throughout the end of the season. Right now, with Devon Achane all banged up and maybe taking a little bit longer to return than what the Dolphins would like, they're just going to be careful with Raheem Mostert. Now, if Mostert plays, we're really not going to talk about any of his backups, but we will discuss them anyway at the end of the rankings. So if you're wondering if anyone else in Miami can start, that will be coming up. But Mostert's going to have a pretty decent matchup. Yeah, New England is ranked 13th against the run right now, but let me tell you, the Dolphins, they're going to want to win, and they're going to want to win big. DeAndre Swift hasn't seen the upside on the ground that we would like over his last couple of contests, but now he's going to be getting a Washington defense ranked 22nd against the run. And if the Eagles come out and they play their game and they play well, they're going to see a pretty positive game script in this matchup, which is going to allow DeAndre Swift hopefully a few more carries than what we have seen lately. And with that comes maybe a 100-yard game. On Monday Night Football, we're going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs at number 10. David Montgomery at this point does look like he will be out this week. So for Jahmyr Gibbs, I do have him a couple of spots lower than the consensus right now, just because it's the Lions and you never know what could happen. And yeah, they're going up against Vegas, who's ranked 24th against the run. And yeah, they're going up against Vegas, who allow the 5th most fantasy points to the running back position. But I'm just going to be cautious with it. For Jahmyr Gibbs, he could end up being as high, really, in my opinion, is RB6 this week. Really between RB6 and RB10 is where you're going to have him. If we find out that Mostert's going to be limited, we're going to go ahead and put him over him as well. For the other guys in front of him, though, I just feel like they might be a little bit safer than Gibbs this week. Gibbs does offer a whole lot of ceiling and a lot more ceiling than some of these other guys, but I also believe his floor is a little bit lower as well, just because with Detroit, I just don't think we ever know what they're thinking. Unfortunately, with Tony Pollard, he continues to be a little bit of a disappointment for those that spent a first-round pick on him this year, and now he gets the LA Rams, who are ranked 20th against the run. So they give up a decent amount of yards on the ground to running backs, but they allow the 9th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Not a ton of work in the passing game for running backs against the Rams, and they don't score a whole lot. Tony Pollard might pick up a decent amount of yards on the ground, but in terms of total production, I don't know if high RB1 upside is going to be in the cards this week. For weeks, I've had Kenneth Walker up near the top RB1s, and he's deserved it every single time. But this week, going up against the Cleveland Browns and their 7th ranked run defense and their 1st ranked defense in football, they've given some fits to some very good teams this season, and Seattle is going to be no different. Kenneth Walker is going to have a tough day. Now, the only reason I think Kenneth Walker is a safe start, because he's going to give you volume. You should still see 18 to 20 carries from Kenneth Walker this week, but his upside is just not going to be there. If he does not score a touchdown, we're talking about potentially 18 to 20 touches this game and under 100 yards. That's really tough to do, but this is a defense that could absolutely shut him down. Tennessee allows the 8th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. They are ranked 14th against the run right now, but I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen with Bijan Robinson this week. We could see another week where the dude sees a decent amount of carries, but Tyler Algier still gets worked in, and who knows, they might be like, oh, Cordero Patterson played so well last week, we should give him more touches too. I have no idea what they're going to do with Bijan Robinson. Does he have the upside of a top 10 running back? Absolutely. He has the upside of a top 5 running back. But last week has thrown a complete wrench into this, because now we have no idea what Atlanta is thinking about Bijan Robinson. And because of that, we just have to be cautious going up against such a tough run defense. For me personally, with Bijan Robinson, are we going to play him? Yep. Are we going to hope that he's our RB2 because we have a better player with RB1 upside? Yep. Let's just hope he gets work in the passing game, because this week on the ground could be a little bit more tough. Josh Jacobs is going to be down at number 14 for me this week, and I really do want to go higher. In fact, I am actually a little bit higher than the consensus on Josh Jacobs. But with Jacobs this week, Detroit got dismantled on the ground this past week by the Baltimore Ravens. But they're coming back home on Monday Night Football to a packed Ford Field. I just don't see how Detroit does not dominate the Raiders. And if they do, like how I'm thinking they will, then Josh Jacobs is going to be on a negative game script. Right now, Detroit is still ranked second against the run even after last week, and they still allow the fourth fewest fantasy points to the running back position. So for Josh Jacobs, really this week, he's going to have to make things go through the air. That's where his upside would come from. If he can get like 5, 6, maybe 7 receptions, he could find himself sneaking inside to the top 10. But I don't think he scores this week, and I think his ceiling is very low. It's week 8 of the NFL season, and ladies and gentlemen, it may finally be Jonathan Taylor week. However, he's got a super tough matchup going up against the number 12 run defense in the NFL that allow the 5th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Jonathan Taylor being down here at 15 really is about the matchup itself. But Jonathan Taylor saw nearly a 50-50 snap split with Zach Moss last week, but saw better production, saw more volume come his way, and Zach Moss is beat up this week. Jonathan Taylor, I would expect to maybe jump closer to 55-45 or maybe even 60-40 this week in terms of snap percentage. So the safety, I think, will be there even if the upside is not. One person I feel like I continue to accurately predict is Derrick Henry. I've called his good weeks this year, and I've called his bad weeks this year. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have a great week either, going up against an Atlanta defense currently ranked 8th against the run and allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points to the running back position. If Tennessee cannot get any type of a lead on Atlanta, then we're going to see a negative game script. And once again, we'll see Tyjae Spears come out and him be on the field probably a little bit more often than what Derrick Henry is. Derrick Henry, to me, really has a ceiling of right here in this area. His floor may even be a little bit less depending on how badly Tennessee ends up getting beat by. We'll see what happens. Maybe Tennessee shocks and surprises some people and plays well. Maybe Arthur Smith just doesn't do a good job of coaching, which we've seen crazier things happen than that. And Derrick Henry ends up having a really good game, but we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, this week may not be one of his better weeks. The Chargers are currently ranked 11th against the run, but they allow a lot of fantasy points to the running back position, the 9th most in the league right now. When you take a look at D'Onta Foreman, Roschon Johnson, as of this recording, is expected to be back this week. So D'Onta Foreman's upside will be nowhere near what we saw last week. And if the LA Chargers play well and put the Bears down, then you're probably going to see a little bit more Roschon Johnson than you would see D'Onta Foreman. But given the game that he had last week and expecting Chicago to try and run the ball early to keep the LA Chargers offense off the field, D'Onta Foreman, if he could put together a couple of decent drives to begin the game and score a touchdown, could still be a pretty safe start as a low-end RB2 this week. I don't want to lie to you all. I really don't know what to think about the Minnesota backfield this week. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and give Alexander Mattison the nod here at number 18 as the presumed starter still, going up against a Green Bay defense ranked 30th against the run and allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position. But Cam Akers started to see a little bit more of the volume last week. Mattison started off the game and saw essentially all of the first quarter snaps and touches. But then Cam Akers saw basically everything in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the majority of the 4th before Alexander Mattison ended up coming back in. Now, apparently Mattison got his bell rung a little bit, but he never went into the concussion protocol and was never really cited with one and isn't even questionable this week. Mattison, I think, will be the starter in a very good matchup, but Cam Akers' name here will come up in just a minute. After Gus Edwards had a great performance last week against the Detroit Lions and their tough run defense, this week he's going to get an even better matchup going up against the Arizona Cardinals, currently ranked 25th against the run and allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position. For Gus Edwards, he's the guy in between the 20s and sees a lot of the volume, way more volume than Justice Hill, even though Hill continues to snipe touchdowns here and there. But Edwards got the touchdown last week and saw some nice touches in inside the 10-yard line. We'll see if that keeps up. But Gus Edwards, a lot of you that have been holding on to him and starting him without a ton of fantasy production should finally get it in a good game this week. At number 20 this week, I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice and say Dameon Pierce continues to be the starter for Houston, going up against the Carolina Panthers, who are currently ranked 31st against the run and allow the second most fantasy points to the running back position. In their last game before the bye, Devin Singletary kind of took over the backfield. Does that mean Dameon Pierce is out at starter? Potentially, but for right now, coming out of the bye, I feel like he's still going to be the guy and given a little bit of a leash just to see what happens with him. Now, if he can't do anything, then I do believe Devin Singletary steps in, and then at that point, things get really bad for Dameon Pierce. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave him in here, but I can't go any higher with him, knowing the fact that he might not see all the touches this week. Kareem Hunt at number 21 is not going to have the easiest matchup this week, going up against the Seattle Seahawks, and Jerome Ford, who will be out, isn't going to be a factor for Hunt, but Hunt himself is also banged up right now, dealing with a thigh injury. Now, he was able to play last week and scored a couple of touchdowns and limited touches, but he was still better efficiency-wise than Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford had that one big carry. Kareem Hunt was a little bit more sustainable throughout the entire game, and he'll be the lead back if he plays this week going up against Seattle. We'll talk about Pierre Strong in here in just a second, but given that it is a tougher matchup and Hunt is a little bit limited, then I say his ceiling will also be limited this week. At number 22, Joe Mixon. Now, San Francisco's defense feels like it has slacked over the last couple of weeks and hasn't played as well as they did to begin the season, but they still have allowed the 4th fewest rushing yards in the NFL right now. Joe Mixon continues to be a guy that has a safe floor because we know he's going to get this many touches and we know he's going to get this many yards. Even if it's not that many yards, he's still giving you a decent floor because we know what we're getting every single week. Lock the guy in for right around 10 fantasy points, give or take a couple of points. And even though he's not going to reach his ceiling in this matchup either, you put him in as your RB2 or flex option, at least you know you won't lose the week. James Cook at number 23, going up against Tampa Bay, whose defense currently allows the 10th fewest rushing yards and the 10th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Game script's going to be the name of the game. If they're up, James Cook could see maybe anywhere up to about 17 or 18 carries. If they're down, then James Cook may only see about 10 carries. Now, Latavius Murray a couple weeks ago saw a lot more touches than what James Cook owners would really like to see. But last week, James Cook was back in the driver's seat. He had a good week. Does his ceiling reach that this week? Absolutely not, but he should still have a pretty decent floor. Minnesota's defense is really right in the middle of the pack in terms of stopping the run right now. However, they have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the running back position. They don't allow a ton of touchdowns and they don't allow a ton of passing yards to running backs. And Aaron Jones right now has missed practice again this week because his hamstring continues to be a little bit on the sore side, they're saying. So right now, I'm going to play it very safe with Aaron Jones. If he does play this week, I expect him to be limited again. And if he is limited, he doesn't have that great of a ceiling, but hopefully we can put him right around number 24. And if he can get in the game and potentially get a few touches for us, if he does somehow find the end zone, maybe he goes a little bit higher, but I can't expect it. At number 25, Jaylen Warren going up against Jacksonville. Really, all this is for me is the fact that I think it's going to be negative game script for Pittsburgh, which is going to put Jaylen Warren in a good position to see a decent amount of targets. At number 26, Javonte Williams. Kansas City's pretty good against the run on the ground. Javonte Williams seemed to be the lead guy last week and see a majority of the touches, and it feels like they are trying to ramp him up a little bit, which would be great if it wasn't against such a tough opponent on the ground. Javonte Williams doesn't have much of a ceiling this week, but hopefully we can still get him right around 12 carries. And number 27, Ramondre Stevenson going up against Miami. I would love to have Ramondre Stevenson higher because a negative game script is in order this week for New England, which would mean more potential targets for Stevenson, but it feels like they completely forget about Stevenson until the 4th quarter, and then when New England is trying to play catch up at the last second, all of a sudden they dump off a few passes to Stevenson, and it saves his week. It'll probably be a lot of the same thing this week. You're going to spend a majority of the time looking at a low score for Stevenson in your lineup, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, he'll get a few catches and he'll look a lot better. And number 28, Brian Robinson Jr., a tough opponent this week, going up against Philadelphia. Best run defense in the NFL right now and allows the fewest fantasy points to the running back position. Really, all you're hoping for this week from Brian Robinson is going to be a touchdown. Rachaad White on Thursday Night Football going up against Buffalo at number 29 for me. Rachaad White is being completely saved by his work in the passing game right now, and that's what he would need this week to reach a higher status than number 29. At number 30, I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard. Yes, Miles Sanders is back this week, and he looks to be fully healthy, which would limit Hubbard's upside. But I think Hubbard is slowly taking over as the lead back, or at least a guy that is going to see maybe more of a 50-50 split, maybe working his way to a 60-40 split. Going up against Houston, I do think Hubbard and his receiving upside have the ability to put him inside the top 30. All right, I got quite a few guys that are on the outside of my top 30 looking in. I'm just going to run through all the names super quick. I'm going to give you like 1 or 2 pieces of information, and then we're going to move on, because for all of these guys I'm getting ready to talk about, they might be starts for you because you have no other choice, but for me, they're not guys that I'm willing to rank with any type of upside. So let's go ahead and kick it off, and the first 2 guys that we're going to talk about are actually entire backfields. The Rams backfield. Number 1, Darrell Henderson was moved back to the practice squad, but that could be a clerical thing because he can be brought back and forth 3 times before he has to be added to the active roster on a full-time basis. We could still see Darrell Henderson called back up and starting by the end of the week, but we have to monitor it. The Miami backfield is up next, and really behind Raheem Mostert, it's a coin flip. A lot of people are asking me about Jeff Wilson Jr., but he saw 11 less snaps than what Salvon Ahmed saw last week. So if you're looking for somebody to back up Raheem Mostert, at this point, honestly, you're just going to have to flip a coin because it's going to be one guy or the other, and I don't really want to play either of them. Now, if Raheem Mostert were to miss for some reason, it's probably still going to be Ahmed for me, but I guarantee you're going to see basically a 50-50 split between both of these running backs if it happens. Najee Harris against Jacksonville, I hate the matchup on the ground. Jacksonville is so good at stopping the run right now that Najee Harris is looking at another inefficient day, and probably going to see more Jaylen Warren if it's a negative game script. Zach Moss against New Orleans, also on the ground, a tough matchup, and Jonathan Taylor is poised to take over. We've seen his snap percentage increase each of the last 3 weeks, and now that Zach Moss is banged up, we could see Jonathan Taylor go over 50%. Emari Demercado probably going to be more of a PPR option this week. He might see a few targets in the passing game and help you out with those receptions, but on the ground against Baltimore, it's going to be a really tough day with very limited upside. Miles Sanders going up against Houston. I feel like Chuba Hubbard is still going to get a majority of the touches this week. Coming off the game that he did 2 weeks ago, prior to the bye, he looked a lot better than Miles Sanders has looked all year long. Chuba Hubbard is coming for that backfield, and right now, Miles Sanders could be on the outside looking in. Pierre Strong Jr. going up against Seattle. We have to wait and see how limited Kareem Hunt will be going into this game, but it is not an easy matchup. So if Kareem Hunt plays, I don't want to try and play Pierre Strong Jr. because on the ground, this is not a great matchup. And by the way, Kareem Hunt was utilized much more in the red zone last week than what Jerome Ford was. So for me, Kareem Hunt is the main back and the guy utilized on the goal line in the red zone, and Pierre Strong is kind of a secondary option. If Kareem Hunt were to miss, Pierre Strong probably bumps into the low end top 30, and I'm not really excited about it. Zeke Elliott at number 38, we're hoping for a touchdown. If you try to start Zeke this week, you're hoping that New England can get into the red zone, get on the goal line, and if they do, Zeke could score. Roschon Johnson is out of the concussion protocol going up against the Chargers. If this is a negative game script, we could see Johnson on the field a little bit more than Foreman this week, and Johnson could help out in PPR leagues. In anything other than a PPR format, Jaleel McLaughlin is a pretty risky bet for you, but if you're in a PPR league going up against Kansas City this week that will likely put Denver in a negative game script, Jaleel McLaughlin could be used a lot more and could help you even if it's not a high ceiling. Justice Hill against Arizona. We're either hoping for some sort of a blowout so Justice Hill sees a few more snaps than what Gus Edwards does, or we're hoping for a touchdown. Gus Edwards will likely run this backfield this week. Cam Akers saw an increased workload last week, and Green Bay is a really nice matchup, but as long as Madison is going to be the starter, Cam Akers would be nothing more than a dart throw. Tyler Algier against Tennessee isn't going to be the greatest matchup in the world, but when you take a look at what he could do, it really depends on Bijan Robinson's Robinson's role this week. I do think Robinson gets worked back into the game plan a little bit more, but who knows? Cordarrelle Patterson didn't look too bad last week. Maybe he sees some touches as well. A.J. Dillon against Minnesota, really, I'm only going to consider him if for some reason Aaron Jones were to miss. That's why I wanted to include him here. If Aaron Jones misses, then maybe we start A.J. Dillon, but if Aaron Jones plays, I'm probably still not going to play him. Devin Singletary going up against Carolina. Not the starter yet, in my opinion, but he's really, really close. Dameon Pierce has to have a big week this week. If he starts off slow, Devin Singletary could come in and take the starting job away. Tyjae Spears going up against Atlanta. The only way I'm playing Spears is if I'm in a full PPR league. If I'm in a half PPR league, it's a really risky shot, but my hope is that Spears has to play in a negative game script, and we'll see a few targets because of that. There you have it, Headliner Nation. My top 30 running backs plus like 16 extra. I talked about over 40 running backs in this video this week. So if there's a guy that you did not hear about, you don't even need to ask in the comments. The question is no. But on the way out, hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and turn on the bell notification. So anytime we go live or we drop a video, you'll be notified about it right away. But good luck to everybody. I'll see you all on the live show on Saturday night. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.